Yeah, and that's why.
I do too. Okay, I would like to call to order the special meeting of the Board for February 22nd, 2022. Please all join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first thing on the hit parade is the first selectman's presentation. That's a presentation.
Okay, Deanne, can you hear me okay?
She's muted.
All right, that's all right. All right, are you admitting people? Okay,
Yes, I am.
Okay, we're doing the co-host thing here. All right, give me just a minute to get into presentation mode. Hey, Deanne, it says host has disabled screen sharing.
Just looking at that. Brad, is this up to date in the computer?
OpenGov is up to date, yes. And you have, you should all have your new printouts. The only thing I didn't print out, again, is the color sheet for debt service that shows the graph. So if you're updating, pull that, because I'm cheap and didn't want to print out more color printouts.
No worries. Just trying to ask what tech support it is. Okay.
Okay, try it now.
Nope.
I'm sorry, what is it saying, Matt?
It says host has disabled screen sharing.
Move.
Were your tickets expensive today?
There. Well, you're a co-host.
Actually, I'm not. You know what? I'm using my own computer, so.
Oh, well, you haven't, I don't even have you on here, Matt. Have you called in to?
Yeah, I'm on.
Oh, wait, there you are. Okay, here we go. That's what it is. Give me just 1 second. I didn't realize.
The one page is like that.
Anybody that's not John?
You
there's
just
my-
find you and I can make you a co-host. Here we There we go. Should
All right, my co-host now. There we go. All right.
Could have taken along with my controls report.
Yeah, right.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry for the. Hold on. We need to let people in the.
Yep, I'll let them in.
All right. Thank you. All right. Well, good evening. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you. This is going to be a little bit of a different presentation. With apologies to those who tuned into the first half of this last week. You're going to hear some of the same stuff, but not all of it. There's a little bit of new information that was put in over the last couple of board of selectmen meetings. So I'm just going to start out by saying we're facing some extraordinary challenges this year. And I know we're not the only ones. I've been watching very carefully, watching the newspaper, watching the other towns, watching their Board of Ed budgets, watching their municipal budgets. And what I find remarkable is that the numbers tend to be pretty similar across the board in terms of the needs that they're seeing. Whether it's school, whether it's town, we're all facing some real challenges after a couple of years where people really kind of pulled back on the budgeting and didn't, really tried to give the taxpayers a break. And I know we all appreciate that. We all want to do the best that we can for all taxpayers of all levels, of all incomes. But at the same time, we have some real challenges when it comes to providing the services that people depend upon and that they should have, that they expect. And now this thing is not going to work with me, is it? There we go. Here's some of the key factors that we're dealing with. Our town is growing, maybe to the chagrin of some folks, but the fact is that we've been growing for the last 20 years. In the last 10 years, it's accelerated. Since the 2010 census, we've seen the population increase by 9.5%. And at 3 full percentage points of that came in the last 2.5 years, which is really remarkable. There is new construction in town. We all know that. We're finally seeing getting close to the end of the build out of some of the several higher density housing developments in town. But even more than that is that doesn't really account for everything, especially the enrollment that we're seeing in the schools. I think a lot of people assume that you put up some high density housing and that alone accounts for the kids that are coming in the school system. I'm not even sure that that's half of it, to tell you the truth, because if you look at the demographics of the town, you look at the neighborhoods, just to use my own neighborhood as an example, 3 years ago, there were 0 kids, 20 homes, 0 kids, because this was a neighborhood that was built out in the 80s and 90s. They had kids, the kids grew up, went off to college, moved away, started their own families. Mom and dad were there for a while, then they retired, they moved away, and now families are moving back in. And that is really happening. You can see it happening, especially up in the Stony Hill neighborhood in the Chimney Heights area. So my neighborhood alone has gone from 0 kids 3 years ago to 8, which is kind of a remarkable change to happen in such a short period of time. Over that time, we've seen growth in the workload at Town Hall. We've seen growth in building permits. I don't need to tell you what the real estate market has done with all the new construction. Not only that, but the building permits and all the activity related to renovations, to new businesses coming into Clark Park, new restaurants. The state has, in their great wisdom, has decided to, a few years ago, they decided to not provide restaurant inspections anymore. That got pushed down to the local level. So Laura and her team have had to come up with many new inspections on top of the ones that they're already doing. And so we're seeing pressure on all points. We're seeing pressure for municipal services. We have more roads. We've actually increased from 84 miles of roadway in the last few years with the new development to about 90. Not a big deal, but every mile adds some more wear and tear to trucks, adds more stress on the relatively small crew that we have to do that stuff. Biggest thing, of course, has been, and I'm sure you paid very close attention to Dr. Carver's presentation, the big impact on our school system because of the pandemic. And a lot of people think we're in recovery mode today. I read a great article in the New York Times just this morning. I watched the science very carefully. Today's article said that recent research seems to indicate that booster shots are even more effective than they originally thought. So whereas they were thinking you might need a booster, especially if you're in a certain age group, every 4 months, every 6 months, now they're saying it's probably more likely that it's going to be a yearly booster shot, just like your flu shot. So we're kind of in, hopefully, if I don't want to, jinx anything, we're kind of on the downward trend of the real big impact of the pandemic. But those impacts are going to last in our schools for a while. If you really listen to Dr. Carver's presentation, those problems that came up with the social emotional needs, the interventions, the lack of learning, the lack of kids that had a preschool experience before they got into the Bethel Public School System, that's going to take a few years to get through. So just because we're kind of, the mask mandates are coming off and things are relaxing across the country, there's still some real pressure on our educators, and they still need the resources to do what they need to do. Now, the good news is we have seen also for 10 straight years, not only growth in the grand list to help offset those costs, but accelerated growth in the grand list. So we're in very, very good shape. Our budget strategy, my strategy with my department heads and Board of Selectmen, with their support, I would say with their nearly unanimous support. And this is really to maintain the strategy that we have worked so well with over the past few years with this board, with the veteran members of this board and the one before it. And that is to reserve our borrowing power for only the big stuff, the big capital construction projects. We are trying to move ourselves into a sustainable budgeting system. Is that you or me? Okay. What do I mean by sustainable? What I mean by sustainable is that most items in our budget.
Do you need a minute?
No, I'm so sorry. I'm interrupting, sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. We'll just emphasize the parts, where I ask for more money.
Okay.
Okay.
We're gonna move.
Anyway, a sustainable budget is where we take the things that could be borrowed for, but we don't borrow for them. We build up our capital reserves so that when we have we're still replacing plow trucks that were built in 1994. I will wager there is a town in Connecticut besides Bethel that has as many 1994 trucks on the road as we do. They're so old that sometimes when the transmissions go, they have to go to a machine shop and fabricate parts because parts haven't been available for 10 years. But a sustainable budgeting practice means that from year to year, we have enough in our highway account that we don't need to boost the budget, that we carry it over from year to year with no change. And maybe every couple of years, we have to tweak it a little bit for inflationary factors, but we can pay cash for those things. We can maintain our vehicles without borrowing money. We can buy a fire truck without borrowing money, as we have. And I want to compliment this board for the work that you've done over the past few years in getting us to that point where we have the financial reserves that we can actually start to use those reserves to benefit our taxpayers and take some of the burden off. And this is the big thing, providing enough resources to serve the public. We have to have the resources at town hall to handle these growing needs, and our school system has to have the resources to handle those very special challenges that they have had to deal with too. So what I'm proposing, which is different this year, is using our financial strength to knock down that mill rate change and make this a more palatable budget for our taxpayers. Our strategy in the past has always been, here's the budget, it's a big number, let's try to cut here, and not do too much harm. Let's, give people the basics of what they need, but let's try to shoehorn it into a level that the voters will accept. And this year, I think, because of the needs that we have to go a different way. We're not going to be able to shoehorn the budget itself, but we can shoehorn the tax change into a very, very palatable, acceptable level, I think, for the vast majority of our taxpayers. And that's what I'm going to show you tonight. Our budget drivers, the things that are in this budget, headcount that you approved last year. There were a couple of positions that were approved for half a year. Now they're fully burdened. More headcount requests. Move a part-time building inspector to full-time in the building department. And I've shared with this board many times over the past 6 months the huge increase in workload in that department. There's a request for 2 more patrol officers in our police department and a request for a special ed teacher for the Bethel Public Schools. Now, personally, when I listened to Dr. Carver's presentation and she says she's trimmed that as hard as she possibly can, I believe it. Having spent 10 years on the Board of Ed myself and knowing some of the challenges they face, I take her at her word that this is, there probably isn't anybody that could do any better with this. Road construction. We have known for years that in order to have that sustainable road construction budget, it has to be above $900,000. We've known that, and yet because of budget pressures in recent years, we have trimmed it back. Every year we tried to make it 100,000 more to try to get it up to that $900,000 level. The last couple of years, it got trimmed back to 700,000. Then last year it got trimmed back to 500,000, which was the same as it was the day I took office in 2009. So we went backwards for a long way. Now we're going to review the highway department. You will remember that we had a town meeting. I took 750,000 from a grant that is normally used for, fun stuff like improving your park and recreation facility, something like that. It can be used for anything, but I applied it to the highway budget to make it whole, and we adjusted the budget through a town meeting to reflect that. But just to let you know, if we know the number is somewhere between 900,000 and $1 million, the budget that they got last year when I added that $750,000 grant was 1.25 million, and 100% of that is spent. Or maybe the bills aren't in. I don't think Brad can see it yet, but 100% of it is committed because we started falling behind and kicking the can down the road in previous years where we were not funding it all the way. So the request for 975 this year is absolute reasonable and minimal request. And we're going to go through that when I do the departments. Parks and Recreation, you'll see increases there because we are restoring, the enrollment is going back up post-pandemic. We expect a full program this summer. And of course, there'll be revenue to offset that. And the same thing goes for the senior center. So just to give you a real quick snapshot, this is the 10-year, well, this is just the 4-year trend line with residential construction. This has been steady for about 10 years though. And you can see it, the red line is the statistical trend. You can see that it's going up. When we plug in 21 numbers, it's going to be even higher. I already know what some of those numbers are. Commercial construction is rebounding. And of course, this board very wisely approved the expansion of Clark Park. We expect to start the infrastructure part of that probably before the end of May. Police department. Our police department has come to us for years now asking for more help. The thin staffing is reflected in the overtime numbers, which are always going over. It's reflected in the workload that prevents officers from doing something that I would like to see more of, which is traffic control. I was working with one of our very excellent officers on a case just in the last couple of weeks. Now, I was working with this officer because we had an incident here at Town Hall where there was a theft. There was a person who was very quickly arrested. This individual has some very unfortunate circumstances. So the officer came to me as the complainant on behalf of the town and said, I would like to get this person some help. They have some real difficulties in their lives. They're recovering from substance abuse. I'm going to get this individual into a program. Could you hold off on the charges while, filing charges while we work on this? So for weeks, I got a report on this. Now, just imagine that all of our officers are engaged in this type of follow-up. It isn't just show up at the grocery store and arrest the person who got caught shoplifting and then they're done with it. Many of these cases that we see in our world today are people who need help, and our police department is working very hard to help them. The other thing that they have are people who are committing identity theft, credit card fraud. They take hours and hours of research and follow-up in the station. Now, I remember not too many years ago when we were contemplating approving a police station, there was a gentleman who objected to that and said, well, we're just a small town. We don't really have, crime has gone down. That's true. Violent crime has gone down, but these other things that are very, very labor intensive have gone way up. And our officers have to spend a tremendous amount of time working on those things. So just to give you an idea of what this looks like, this is arrest comparison just from 2018, which is the last year that we had full data. I don't know why it lags so long, but so way over on the left, you see Bethel out arrest, if you want to put it that way, our neighboring towns by a lot, almost by a factor of 2. But look at this. I remember one of the members of this board asked the chief when he presented, why do you think that is? Here's one big reason. This is just looking at that one number from 2018. Out of 405 arrests, 63% of them were out of towners. The fact is Bethel is on that corridor that runs between Bridgeport and Danbury. There was a very visible SWAT operation at one of the establishments along Route 6 just a few weeks ago. People come off the highway, they hang out there for a little while. It's a corridor. Maybe that explains it. I'm not sure, but this is a statistic that says over the past 10 years, 60 to 70% of the arrests that are made in Bethel are not Bethel people. They're from other towns. And our department has to deal with that. The other thing is police calls for service. Again, the red trend line is an exponential statistical trend line, but you can see the change in that over the last the last 12 years leading up to 2020. It's just a steady climb. The police go out for everything. They have to have enough officers to be able to cover that. So this budget will address the request for 2 officers coming up next year. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to do it in previous years. I went through the departments first and I gave you a summary at the end. I'm going to start with the summary and then work backwards through the departments. So on the town side, we're looking at an increase of $716,000, a little bit more. That's a 2.13%. And this includes all the costs that are related to the schools. So the 460 account is in there, but so is other stuff: insurance, employee benefits, utilities, school resource officers, building maintenance. That's not part of the 460 account. That is just regular maintenance that goes on day to day. And the big one, of course, is debt. Now, what do those things account for? When our voters go to the polls and they're faced with 2 choices, they have here's the town budget, yes or no, and here's the school budget, yes or no. The thing that many people do not understand is that they're not cleanly divided. And I know I did speak with a couple of you in recent months about that, but I just want to show you the magnitude of what that means to the town side of the budget. Of the 34 million on the town side of the budget, 7.7 million, almost 7.8 million, is related strictly to schools. And what's really important for everybody to understand is we can't change these numbers. They cannot be reduced. If the budget goes down, or if you change the budget, these numbers have to stay the same. So the only thing that we can pull from the town side is something that's going to take a service away from our constituents. Now, the thing I really want to point out here is look at the increase from the prior year. Last year, this number was about 7.1 million. It's gone up because of school debt. So when you look at the town operations budget, out of that $716,000 increase that we're asking for, $622,000 of it is fixed numbers from the school side that supports our schools, as it should. So the real change to the town budget is only 0.28%, even with the things that we're asking for. And we wouldn't be able to do that without the help from the debt service fund that I'm going to talk about in a minute. I'm going to ask Brad to expound on that at the end of my presentation. So this is what the 23 budget summary looks like. Town is up by 3.22, education 4.31. You will notice if you've watched the News Times lately, all the school districts in our area are coming in well above this. I haven't seen one yet that's below it, in the 4.5 and higher range, because they're dealing with the same things that our educators are dealing with. School maintenance is up by a lot because frankly, we cut it back in recent years to make a number. These are mostly the service contracts that keep our schools in good shape, that it's not the daily maintenance. These are the things like boiler systems, roofs, and so on. And we have to have a realistic number in there. Now, the debt number is going down, and that is because of the debt service account. And Brad, I'm going to ask you to talk about that in just a minute, but rather than focus our taxpayers on the increase in the budget, this budget carries an estimated tax increase, and this is your area. This is just an estimate that Brad helped me put together. That this carries an estimated tax increase of 1.15%, so a little bit less than 1.2%. And that equates to a tax change of $86 per year for the median home in Bethel under our current assessment, for $7.15 a month. Brad, do you want to talk for a minute about the debt service account?
Sure, we went into it a lot with the presentations. So over the last 5 to 10 years, the debt service fund, which has always been a separate fund from the general fund, has built up to the point that it's 3.7 million. Some of it is when we finished the high school audit. That was 800,000 of it. At one point, we had taken almost $1 million of some of our year-end transfers that the Board of Finance approves to put in there to use for future debt. And there's been a couple other things. Hasn't been a lot of the premiums, but it's built up over time. So we can go into the how we got here another time, but right now we're at $3.7 million in this fund. It's time to use it. And the time to use it is trying to lop off some of this high year that we have coming up and some of the future years to control our debt. At this point, we don't have anything huge that we should be bonding. We do have a big capital plan, but we've been managing a lot of our stuff using our fund balance and our CNR funds. So that's why we decided to use it this year. Why we didn't use it last year, in part because we had a big increase, is the schools are still ongoing. We want to make sure we were going to get the reimbursements we thought we were going to from the state. And knock on wood, so far, that's all went well. And the other thing that is now is a good time to use it, because in the next couple of years, we're going to have the audit of the 2 renovation schools. And assuming those go as we planned, we should have more money to put in this account to control future debt as well. So just plan over the next 6 or 7 years to draw it down. The last year, if we don't add anything to it, still leaves $620,000 to control any new debt that comes on. And we're just trying to level our debt for a while and bring it down so that we're not having to tax people to pay for our debt service when we have these funds available at this point.
So we've talked in the past in recent years about the danger of so-called buying down the mill rate. That's not something the bond rating agencies look kindly on, to use your fund balance to just say, well, we want to lower the mill rate. This is not the same thing, because this is a sequestered fund, as Brett said, it's for debt. And it is a perfectly acceptable use of that fund when you have the situation that we're in now, where because of the school renovations, you've got this temporary spike. It goes up for a few years and then it starts to cool off and fall, that falls off again. It's perfectly acceptable to use that debt service fund to level that, to give the taxpayers a break so they don't have that big shock for 2 years and then bring it back down, because that comes down over time anyway. So it was my proposal, and the Board of Selectmen accepted that we use this fund. We recommend that you use it. That this is in your area of authority, but this makes our budget affordable in a way that probably we couldn't be able to do it if we didn't have this fund. And again, I'm gonna sound like I'm waving somebody's flag, but I want to thank the board members for the years that we have spent getting ourselves putting our fiscal house in order to even make this possible. Because I can tell you that the year I took office in 2009, nothing like this was possible. We had a We had a fund balance of $6 million and $3 million of it was an IOU. It wasn't even there. So we can talk about that another time.
Now, before you switch slides, can I ask the question about what our average home numbers are?
The average, well, it's a median assessed value right now is 217,000.
Yeah, and that's assessed, so that's 70% of market value.
Thank you.
So you can easily take that, you know, for some of the homes that have recently in the past year, you know, changed hands, take that and double it. So, but it's still, it's an extremely affordable change in that tax rate. So thank you for that. Any other questions before I move on to departments?
With respect to the grand list, you were mentioning how the grand list is grown.
1.47% in the last year, I believe. Is that 1.49, Brad?
Real estate's up 1.22. Personal property's up 1, motor vehicles up almost 29%, but it's because of the values of used cars.
Right. With respect to the numbers in the last slide, those were figured on what we're projecting to have. Or is this?
No, that's, well, that,
With respect to the revenue.
So can I answer that, Matt?
yeah,
So
go ahead. Yeah.
the revenue projection that you have in your handout tonight is based on what we know now. So the governor's talking about doing something with the car mill rate, but the state's gonna reimburse it. This is, the governor doesn't change any of that. He doesn't change any of the formulas, or it's not really it's legislative, obviously, that would change all that. It's based on what we know right now, the revenue projection, and based on our expenses after the Board of Selectmen made their changes, that's what our mill rate would be. You know, by the time that we have an approved budget, stuff can change, but we can only go with what our best case scenario is right now. It's not, sorry, I shouldn't say best case, because we're not, the state's talking about giving us this and giving us, this is a conservative estimate on what the state's gonna give us.
It could get better.
It's election year.
Yeah, we don't bank on that. You know how that works.
It's election year. I know.
Any other questions before I move on? All right, this won't take long. Most of the departments have relatively small change. I'll call out the ones that have a bigger change. The Selectmen's budget, which includes not only my salary, which the board changed last year, and thank you for that, but also stipends for the other 2 selectmen, the HR department, the benefits coordinator, the economic, half of the economic development director's salary. Treasurer, no change. That is a stipend for our elected treasurer. Comptroller's office or the finance office, slight downward change because of new personnel. In our HR structure, we don't have as many steps as the teachers do, but we do have like a 3-tiered system. So when there's changeover, you'll often see a slight decrease in the salary line. Town clerk, modest change there. They had a new person who is now at full step, and then the town clerk is expecting some election expenses, expecting a primary coming up at the state level this year.
These percentage numbers, Brad, are what I have on the sheet that you printed out for me.
Should be the same.
Well, the controller said 0% and the town clerk said minus point.
Are you going off that one sheet? So look at
Yeah.
this, Cynthia, so this ties out to it.
Okay,
So I don't know what happened with that.
I don't know. Okay, there we go.
Assessor, again, they have somebody who is now fully stepped up to the full salary. Plus, there's been a increase in the CAMA software. That's the software that's used statewide for assessing. Tax collector has 2 new individuals, so there's a slight decrease in salaries. All other expenses remain the same. Legal service is a big change, and this is one of those budgets that we tend to historically, and I'm not throwing anybody here under the bus because I participated in this too. We make the budget be what we want it to be, and then it gets overspent because there are tax appeals and land appeals and union negotiations. So we have to just start bringing this up to a realistic level, because if people take you to court, you're going to wind up spending it anyway. We have to start reflecting it. This is probably not 100% of where it needs to be, but it's closer. Probate Court is a shared court, of course, with 3 other towns. Very minor change there. Information technology, you remember that you approved a part-time person last year. and that is now reflected in there. And there's some licensing increases in there too. Mr. Gates, I don't think 70,000 square feet is quite large enough for his house. So there's some new Microsoft licensing fees in there. The good news is we'll get upgraded to a version of Office that was published later than 2007. So that's a good thing. I was trying to make a chart today with Excel, and my version is so old, the chart.
You were trying to make a joke too, I got
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Town insurance is actually good news. I'm gonna throw compliments over to our comptroller, who as assistant comptroller was our risk management professional, and working with Kerma, we have consistently managed to beat the odds and lower the workers' comp insurance, and even with the property and liability. Property and liability went up a little bit because we've added cybercrime insurance, which we didn't have before. And that's also part of the IT budget too, is that we put some two-factor identification in to protect our assets from raiding. In Connecticut, last year in 2021, there was a record number of cybercrime attempts in the state, and many of them went through. There were some towns that lost millions through ransomware or just stolen money, intercepted transfers. Planning and zoning, slight increase in salaries from the previous year. Registrars is a decrease. They had some expenses last year that they don't expect to have this year, even though they're also expecting primaries, so they were able to trim a little bit. Boards and commissions, the Board of Selectmen trimmed this a little bit. This was originally pegged at 73,000. 20,000 of that was for a charter commission. We took 10,000 away because realistically, we don't think that even if we start a charter commission, it really wouldn't get going and incur expenses till the last half of the year anyway. So there's no point in having it in there. It would cover about an 18-month period, but for the first year, we wouldn't need that much. Parks and Recreation, trying to bring them back up. Again, they're expecting full summer programs this year. Their theater program has been massively successful. Their youth theater program, and most of those things are self-funding. So there you do see a 2.3% change there, but expect about 620,000 in program fees and revenue. Employee benefits, with the change in minimum wage, with some of the new employees that are now fully burdened in the budget, you see a slight change there. In FICA, hospitalization and pension. Not really out of the ordinary. IntraGovernment Agencies. These are the folks like Council of Small Towns, HART Bus, Western Connecticut Council of Government, CCM, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. Especially Council of Small Towns and CCM provide a tremendous amount of legal research, lobbying efforts, and employee training, as a matter of fact. In fact, several of you participated in the CCM board orientation earlier this year, which is one of the most valuable things that they do for us. Utilities, 6.7% increase there. There's increases in fuel surcharges on electricity. Yes, we have a solar farm. The only thing I can tell you is that if we didn't have a solar farm, it'd be a lot bigger than this. So it is pulling its weight, but there is an increase there. Miscellaneous charges and transfers. And of course, as I'm sure you've heard from the comptroller before, we have 4 bargaining units coming up this year. We really don't like to do it that way. We like to have one come up every year for 3 years. On the 4th year, there's going to be 2, but this year, just for a variety of reasons, we've got all 4 of them coming up at the same time. So we've got library, clerical, the highway and park and rec workers, and police patrol. So we have a reserve set aside, a wage contingency in there, as well as in the legal line for negotiations. Senior Center, $10,000 of this increase is putting programs back in place. They expect a revenue offset of $46,000. Then there's a $1,700, a little bit more than $1,700 offset or increase in salaries for the staff. Building inspection, this is one of the areas, as I said in the preamble, a tremendous amount of pressure. We currently have 2 full-time inspectors. One is Chris Baldwin, who's the department head. Joe Fallow is the other full-time inspector. Then we have 2 part-time inspectors who work anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week, depending on how much they can give us. They both came out of retirement as a kind of as a favor because Chris really said he needed the help. They could go back into retirement at any time, and the 2 part-timers is not enough to keep up with the flow here. So we're asking for 1 part-time position to be increased to full-time due to the workload. Emergency management, Tom Galliford's department. The biggest change here is an increase in the radio tower lease. This is the Spring Hill tower that relays police and fire calls. We tried to buy that thing a few years ago, but the owner of that particular property got a lot more money from another private investor. Really wouldn't even entertain our discussion. So that didn't work. Fire marshal's office is also Tom Galliford's slight salary adjustment. Bethel Fire Department. Bethel Fire and Stony Hill Fire Department both had their budgets reviewed and vetted by the new Fire Commission. They raised one budget and lowered the other to try to balance them out. I think the Fire Commission did an excellent job. They really dug into things like who are the vendors where they get the turnout gear, and who are the vendors that provide the air systems, the self-contained breathing apparatus and the masks, and who does the fitting and where to get the physicals, and try to combine these things for savings. So I think our Fire Commission, they're really great volunteers. They kind of struggled to get their feet on the ground coming out of the gate, but they're really starting to show some value here and really understand how they can positively affect not only the public safety, but save our taxpayers money too. And they really know their stuff. So I was very pleased at the meetings I sat through there. Stony Hill was the one that got increased a little bit, but again, in a very responsible way and combining purchases to make it to soften the blow on taxpayers. Police Department, and as I mentioned, they need cars and they need officers. What the Board of Selectmen did was, we took one vehicle off. It looks, I mean, if Mr. Manfred is correct, we probably have to buy another vehicle in the near future out of capital non-recurring to get them all the way up to speed. But just to take pressure off this budget, we removed one of the 4 vehicles, and then you, of course, approved the one tonight. So they will be up to 4 as part of this request. For the 2 full-time officers, the Board of Selectmen approved 1 immediately and approved 1 full-time officer to begin at half year. So it's a 1.5% 1.5 FTE increase. I want to thank Chief Pugner, for working with us on that. And he said that, one of the things he passed along to me is that we could capture some savings by, but it would be difficult to get a spot at the academy for the second offer until the second half of the year anyway. So we could fund this for half a year and take part of that out. So we did approve two full-time officers, 1 at the start of the fiscal year and 1 halfway through. And we did adjust the FICA to reflect that as well. Social services, the biggest change here is a $2,000 increase in the Bethel Emergency Fund. You will see at the end of my presentation that the economic indicators for Bethel are very, very good. The economy right now, amazingly, is very strong, but that didn't float everybody's boat equally. There are some people who are still suffering from the pandemic. We know that. Megan has a very close handle on that and works with the agencies in our area as well as the senior center. And this, I think, is a very reasonable request to help those Bethel citizens who are still struggling to come out of this pandemic and get back on their feet financially. Health Department, biggest change here was you funded half a position last year. Now that's fully burdened. And this is another department that is pretty much 6-7 days a week all the time, even with the help. We're hoping that we kind of plateau there sometime this year, but so we're not asking for anybody new, but this is the full-time sanitarian will be on board and taking some of that load off of Laura's shoulders. Fleet maintenance, this is strictly because vehicles are getting older and they're requiring more service. Public Works is asking for a part-time staff due to the workload there. And this is not related to ARPA. This is just the stuff that they do on a regular basis. So that's $20,000 for part-time. Highway Department. I want to be sure my colleague Brian Terzian reminded us that we really need to explain what happened here. If you look at the number in red in the first line, last year this number was funded at 1.9 million. We later adjusted it, and as I said when I started the introduction, we pulled 750,000 out of our LoCIP account to apply strictly to highway. So we did have a town meeting, and Board of Selectmen approved it. The town meeting approved it. So we adjusted that number upward. So on paper, you see that the highway department budget actually drops by 337,000. Well, not really, because of that addition. I just want to be 100% transparent about that. The actual change from what was approved last year originally is an increase of 412,000. But this is, again, really very necessary to keep us at a sustainable level. I'm going to pause just for a minute and talk a little bit about the first year I ran for this office. It was the summer of 2009. And I don't normally like to talk about a political thing at this time of this type of presentation, but it's instructive because it was 2009. The recession was raging. I expected to hear people say, "I can't pay my taxes. You got to make the budget lower." And what I heard was 4 out of 5 homes I knocked on the door. They said, "I'm so tired of driving on potholes. I want this town to invest in itself. I want the roads to be fixed, and I don't want to go into my kid's school and find leaks, find buckets on the floor." And I think that sentiment still exists today. People want their town to be maintained appropriately. So just to show you where we are with this, this is the list that Bob Dibble put together for 2022, 2023. So you can see that, I think when you guys asked him the questions, like how do you come up with, he was talking about, number of square yards and miles and linear feet and inches of asphalt and double layers, which is very theoretical. Actually, what he's extremely good at what he does, he actually prices out, he finds the roads that need to be fixed. He determines what needs to be done, because not everything is a full scale, dig it up and start over. Sometimes it's just you mill it and replace the surface, the base is okay. Sometimes you have to do full depth reclamation and dig everything up, put a new base in. So he projects this out. This is one of 3 lists. So he projects out 3 years. So you can see, in fact, maybe some of the folks watching tonight can see that maybe their street is on this list. But we've already taken a little bit of a bite out of this with what the selectmen did, because they took 75,000 out of this account, brought it down to an even 900. So probably, this is theoretical at this point, but probably we'll have to take 1 or 2 roads off this list and push them into the next fiscal year. But I'm respectfully asking this board, I hope you can leave this at 900,000, because I don't want to take any more off. Even though we've replaced probably about 68, 69% of the roads or resurfaced them in the last, say, 7 or 8 years, I still get calls. Roads never get better. They're not like bottles of wine. A hard winter takes its toll, and sometimes emergencies have to eat into this budget, and we have to knock a road off for that reason too. So I would really want this budget to stay where it is as revised.
I just have a question about the
Sure.
highway. But didn't we get like a $5 million road reparation? I don't remember what it's called. The grant. the grant for, when you were in office, there was a grant to repair the roads.
The road recovery plan?
Yes,
That wasn't a grant, that was just borrowed money.
okay,
We didn't, yeah,
there was no federal involvement with that? 'Cause
no. In the summer of 2010, I started in December of 2009. The town had just gotten a Tiger grant, remember, from the Obama administration? And that was used to repave Old Hollyville Road. But that's the only road grant we've ever gotten that I can think of.
How much was that?
What's
I
that?
mean, how much was that? Because I know that there was a significant amount of money.
It was like $500,000. It was about $500,000, but again, that was the summer of 2010 they did that, and it was enough to repave Old Hollyville from Route 6 to Plum Trees. And then they did the later half, a couple of years later, from Plum Trees down to
Okay.
302. But that was done on, what we did, and I know Bob Manfreda, tracked this very, very well. Through those first years where we really were way, way behind on roads, the road budget had been pegged at $500,000 for 10 years. So from like 1999 to 2009, it was $500,000, but the cost of materials was going up. So the amount of miles of roads being fixed was going down by that amount. So for about 4 or 5 years, we spent $2 million a year on roads. So there was, $500,000 or then 600,000 and 700,000 from the town operating budget, but the rest of that was borrowed on short-term notes. And it made sense to do it back then because we were seeing short-term notes be like 11 basis points, 12. It was almost like borrowing money almost for free. So you could borrow, make the short-term borrowing to fix roads and then pay that off before those notes were due in 7 years. And then what the veterans on this board did, and of course you've been here
I
for a
was
few
a
years.
big proponent of
Yes,
funding behind
right,
it.
you were, and then you guys paid off those short-term notes and got us to the point where I think we're completely out of short-term notes now, right?
Correct.
So if you think about it, it's kind of a lesson in not letting your infrastructure get so far behind that you have to do that. Because think about this. We started building roads in 2010. We borrowed a bunch of money and then we paid it off. And that whole process took 10 years to get us back to the point where we have the opportunity to keep that road budget level and not build in an increase for next year because we took stuff out of it this year. That's why I'm really so insistent that we try to keep that road budget at no lower than 900,000 so we can move ahead. So anything else?
No, I just wasn't clear even now I'm not even clear on what the Road Recovery Act was, so.
Oh, it wasn't, that was marketing. I made that up. I called
Oh,
it.
you made that up.
Yeah, it was.
Good to know.
It was
your slogan. Okay.
My original plan was to ask the Board of Finance in 2010 for an $8 million bond to do a bunch of stuff, like to use over a period of time.
I get it now.
Yeah, and then they said, no, but what we'll do is bring us the road list every year and so they did that. They approved the
Yeah.
borrowing every year for 5 years and then the rest, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Transfer station is no big deal. Increase in tip fees. I will tell you that we are very lucky that we're part of Housatonic Resource Recovery Authority. That is now, we've had several towns join it. So there's 14 towns that band together and we negotiate for better rates. Also the stewardship programs, which allow us to recycle things for free. So our taxpayers don't have to pay for that. But just to show you how much of a big deal this is, we pay $10 a ton to tip recyclables. The city of Stamford pays $500,000 to do the same thing because they're not part of a consortium about this. Most of the cities in the Northeast the bigger cities have seen their waste disposal things increase by a factor of 300 or 400% over the last 2 years. So we're part of an organization that is negotiating very, very well with the industry, with the waste and recycling industry to save us money. So we're in pretty good shape there.
Yeah, how many permits are people using this?
Oh, yeah.
How many permits?
I think about 2,400.
2,400?
What
What
are
is the revenue side of that?
They're, the permits are free.
No, I get
So we
that,
switch
but
that.
how much they taking in the register?
Looking at what the budget number is. We budget $186,000 for revenue for it.
It's close to break even, right?
Yeah, well, the
Well, not
budget,
really.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
we-
17, but that doesn't include the benefits for the employees, so it doesn't
Yeah.
break even. And that's why it was brought into the general fund years ago and not its own fund anymore. Because we would have to raise the rates on the taxpayers so much to make it work. So. And a couple
And
years
there's
ago, they
two
did
employees up there full time,
two, correct,
but their salary is in there, but not the benefits.
correct.
Thank you.
Right, thanks for that. Building maintenance, this is an increase, it's a, kind of like the other one we talked about, this needs to be realistic, because things break. And it has been overspent kind of regularly. Separately, over the next 2 years, we have to replace both elevators in this building. The one that's in this hallway and the one that's down in the Board of Ed wing. The one that's over here is right outside my office. I can't tell you how many times I hear the bell go off and people have to be rescued from that. They're both on their last legs. So that is something that will probably go into ARPA funds. So we don't need to put that in here. Tree warden, no change. Right now, we're still trying to find somebody who is willing to be a tree warden. Debt service, this is the bigger story. And as Brad was talking about earlier, without the debt service fund, we would have had another more than $1 million increase in the debt load. So if the budget, that would have made it extremely ugly. So we're very fortunate to have this here. Library is expecting to go back to full staffing. They were partially closed and doing curbside pickup. They did furlough people for part of the pandemic. And now that they're open, they're going to be back up to full staff. This budget reflects that. Board of Education, the only change the Board of Selectmen made upon the recommendation of the superintendent and the business manager, the fact the night that we met, they had voted on a new bus contract, and that was $60,000 less than their original estimate. So we took that out. But the rest of the Board of Ed, we feel very strongly is necessary to address the severe needs that they are seeing in the schools. Board of Ed maintenance, again, bringing that to a realistic number. This has been around 500,000 for years. We've used some CNR and some emergencies here and there, but this is just basically a status quo budget as far as that. This handles their maintenance agreements and contracts. We have no capital items to request this year that would require borrowing or a separate vote. We have an $11 million capital needs list that is part of our 10-year plan. And as we did last year, the selectmen will bring those to you, prioritize the things that are most urgent and bring them to you on a case-by-case basis to be paid from CNR. In the past, these things usually went on to the budget. It was usually the expectation that we would borrow money short-term to pay for them. But we left the CNR budget at 650 as it was last year. And we feel that with the needs coming up this year, that is adequate. And we do have some accumulated CNR too, that we can handle that. So to summarize, this is the budget where we are today. And I personally think this is the tightest, most responsible budget that I have seen all of the departments put together. You know, the selectmen made some changes. Personally, I wasn't happy with the highway one, but you know, I will support it 1,000,000%. That was the vote. I will support this budget, and I think that our taxpayers would accept this. And I would hope that you would pass that along and allow them the opportunity to weigh in and vote on it.
Matt, I'm sorry, just to make sure folks aren't confused, I think there might be a typo in the school number, the 60,000 would come out of the number on that page.
Which one?
The 60 is out of there. The original one had 2,174,000. Maybe it didn't come out of the whole number. Maybe I just took it out of the change when I updated it. You're right. I only adjusted the change column.
Oh,
So it should be 51, 164, 831.
oh, okay. All right,
I adjusted the other two columns, just not the first one.
all right. I'll fix that before.
Terry works on it.
Terry, you'd be fine with that.
One last thing.
Yeah.
Before I-
Will you repeat that total 51 what?
164,831.
Thank you.
I had it right on the first one.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Boy, I didn't quite finish this. There's been a lot of talk about how people really got hit during the pandemic. They did, but it was very temporary. And, I know some people have a very hard time, dealing with this statement, but in Bethel, the economy right now is booming. We have seen record real estate sales over the last year. We've seen escalation in selling prices in the 25 to 30% range. As of today, the data that I pulled this morning from the state of Connecticut Department of Labor indicates that their number was from the end of December. Bethel's unemployment rate is currently 5.5% versus state and national at higher. Our collection rate is 99.6%. It's actually higher than the last year and higher than the year before and higher than the year before that. And our fiscal year 22 year to date is 78.
I think it was 78, yeah. Same time last year,
78%
76.
versus last year at this same time, it was 76. So again, financially, we are healthy. We have a fund balance that allows us the flexibility to ease the burden on our taxpayers. And the indications I see is that these are the things that our taxpayers can afford. And these are the services and the programs that they want for themselves and for their kids. So that's my presentation, and this budget is committed to your hands.
Matt, can we speak about the 99.6? Do you think there's more on the tree we can get from the people? Or do you think they're making the right decision, being good neighbors?
99.6, what do you mean?
The collection rate, you're saying that people obviously can afford their taxes because they're paying it. My read on it is they're making the right decision and paying their taxes, but maybe not going on their vacations. Do you?
I have no data on that. But I would say that, the vast majority of property tax collections are done through the banks.
Most people don't even know what they're paying in taxes.
I
know.
can tell you some hilarious stories about that. You're absolutely right. Yeah. But I couldn't answer that. All I can tell you is that across the board, the tax collections are very healthy. And I think it's important to point out that I was on the Board of Ed back in 08 when the big crash came. And that was not the case in 08. I think the tax collection rate dropped very precipitously. And let's see, I'm trying to think if anybody in this room was with us then. The Board of Selectmen and Board of Education had to both cut expenses mid-year because of the fall off in revenue. And I know that when this pandemic hit, there was an expectation, not only among some of our Board of Finance members across the globe. I mean, why do you think you can't buy a car right now? It's because, all the big car makers said, oh my gosh, the bottom's going to fall out of the market. Let's cut production. So they told the guys who make the chips, don't make as many chips. So they didn't. And now they can't get caught up because that didn't last. So we never saw, unlike the big recession in 2008, 2009, we never saw that big drop in revenue happen. It just continued to go up.
Okay. Do you want to take 5 minutes or do you want to?
Yeah, I
carry
think we
on?
should take a 5-minute break. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is- Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the deliberation portion of our program, and I just want to say a couple things. We're going to try to follow Robert's rules. And basically that means that, I know that there are a lot of people here present, department heads, and if somebody from the board has a question, that's fine, but then they can ask anything they want. But it's just not, I'm trying to think of limiting that because we've seen all the presentations and several times. And we know, but if somebody has a specific question, they'll ask. And then, that's what I was thinking. Now, we're not gonna go in numerical order, but first, what's going on? Where did you come from?
Walked right in. Been here all the time.
I've been here all time. Okay, we are gonna go from 100 up to 150, and then we're gonna skip 160, but let's go through. For the ease of Dion's note taking, I'm gonna make the motion. Nick is going to settle down, kids. You're gonna second it for discussion.
Are you telling me what to do?
No,
Can my brother have a speaking?
we
right?
agreed on it. No, your brother can be a walk-on champion. Okay, the first account, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Selectmen account 10-100 in the amount of, and Brad will correct me if I'm wrong, $318,404.
I would second that for discussion.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay. All, listen, okay, so those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There we go. Okay, next one is 110, treasurer, in the amount of $5,500.
I would second that one.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, next is the controller. Account 120 in the amount of $475,829.
I would second
Any discussion there? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
it. Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Bob's here, right? Bob's here? Oh, I didn't making sure you're here. Bob.
Bob's here.
It's good to hear you.
You'll hear me when I have something to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, Okay, the next one is 130, the town clerk, in the amount of $242,471.
I would second that.
Any discussion there?
If I could, I know Lisa, town clerk's position got a raise last year.
And Brad, there's nothing in here, and I know she's not in a union.
Yep.
So if we acted on this, I think now's the time to act on it. I'm not supporting it to increase it, but I think it should be during budget time. That's just my opinion, to be out in the open so everybody knows instead of doing it.
You mean to determine the salaries of elected officials?
Right. Hey, yeah, I mean, there's other positions.
Right.
There's a few other ones,
You guys can do it anyway. you
Yeah,
want.
we can
So
put it
it's up
on
to the
next
Board of
month's-
Finance.
but this shows nothing for the town.
Correct.
clerk's position.
Right,
That's it.
There is, I will say there is some money put in the wage adjustment account, because that's the way we've done it in the past,
yeah.
to give raises to elected officials.
Okay.
Well, just 5,
Yeah, they're 5.
the 5 that this board has control over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha, thanks.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? Okay, next is the assessor. 140, the count, and in the amount of $250,880.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? Okay, now we're gonna skip for the moment. Oh, wait, the tax collector, yeah, right. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve account 150, tax collector, in the amount of $209,000 and $209,512.
Second.
Okay, for discussion. Okay. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, we're gonna skip 160 and go to 170 probate court. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 170 in the amount of $5,911.
Second.
Discussion. Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is account 190, information technology. I'd like to make a motion to fund that account in the amount of $363,717.
You're an open gov, D, so
Yeah, it's
the
that. we have
list from the
different prefix.
printouts goes all the tens and the twenties.
Yeah, we're doing the tens first. Okay, where was it? Okay, information technology.
So we second that.
All right, any discussion now? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next is town insurance. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 210, town insurance, in the amount of $1,379,256. Discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is planning and zoning. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 250, planning and zoning, in the amount of $263,462.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is register of voters. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 330, register of voters, in the amount of $100,860.
Second.
Discussion.
Bob, or Brad, these are the two positions also in that
Yes.
elected official.
Yep.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're gonna skip now to 405, which is, yeah, IntraGovernment Agency. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 405, Intergovernment Agency subs, in the amount of $478,423.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is the, we're gonna, utilities, 410. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 410, utilities, in the amount of $2,634,886.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so. And the next, we're gonna skip down to emergency management, which is where is that? Where is it?
290.
290. Oh, that's in the 20s, okay. Okay, skip down to that. I would like to make a motion to fund account 20-290, emergency management, in the amount of $43,696.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the next one would be the fire marshal. So I'd like to make a motion to fund account 20-300, the fire marshal, in the amount of $110,752.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So next is the Bethel Fire Department. All right. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 20-310, the Bethel Fire Department, in the amount of $192,265. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? I agree that they did a really good job, both the fire department. Okay, now we're gonna go to. No, that's in the second, let me have that in another batch. We're gonna go to social services, which is 30,200, 30,200.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Did you want to do Stony Hill Fire?
She's gonna save it for later.
We split up,
Okay.
that's why we're skipping some.
What account is that? I'm sorry. Yeah, we're going to 30-200.
Yeah, 30-200, which is social services. All right. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 30-200 social services in the amount of $91,950.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So next, we're going to go to the health department. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 30-350, the health department, in the amount of $477,019.
Second.
Any discussion?
Deanna must need a break.
Huh?
Deanna must need a break. She's right.
Oh, no, she's very, no, I'm sure she's fine.
Yeah.
Not getting a break from all our gabbing. All right, any discussion on the health department? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we're gonna go over to 4245, which is the transfer station. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to fund the transfer station 40-245 in the amount of $205,551.
Second.
Discussion. Do you still have that table?
The free table, it's back right here.
It's fine.
You have to wear a mask.
I haven't been there in a while. Ron made us take garbage cans. I can get it, somebody picking it up. It ruined my social life. Okay, if any discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now the next one is the mysterious tree warden. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 40-270, the tree warden, in the amount of $117,900.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Sorry. just one minute. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's just skip through. What we're trying to do is, we don't know how long it's gonna take, and we're trying to do the stuff that we can go through with that. We don't want to be brain dead when we're making decisions, is what I'm trying to say. Oh, thanks for that. Okay, let's go to, sorry, we're gonna go back to 10-160, which is professional services. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to fund account 10-160 professional services in the amount of $309,830.
You really need a second.
Oh, gotta do it. Is there any discussion? Just remind me why this increased. Is it because it's not been enough every year?
And we have 4 union negotiations coming up this year, which will require labor attorney.
Okay,
Yeah, the 5-year average on it, Cynthia, is 225. The like 3-year average
Yeah.
is uglier. So.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any discussion on this account? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, let's go to 10-380 Parks and Recreation. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 10-380 Parks and Recreation in the amount of $1,580,177.
Second.
Any discussion? I just want to say, I think, this is fine the way it is. I think that they've made a lot of, a lot of people are signing up for their programs and they always pay for themselves, so I'm not on this. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Employee benefits. I'd like to make a motion. We're gonna go to 390.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
you might want to say employee benefits until you do accounts that have new hires.
there you go.
That's why it wasn't listed as.
Yes, I know. So now I'm going into the second half, so that's why. Okay, let's go to 10-340, which is the senior center.
340 is boards and commissions,
Yeah.
430.
I'm
is
sorry,
senior center.
430. I had a little dyslexic moment. 30. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 10-430, the senior center, in the amount $250,450.
Second.
Any discussion?
You did a good job.
Well, I know that.
You're there, right? Wednesdays?
Yeah, I'm playing bingo. That's what I do. No, believe me. Okay, so the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think you
Oh,
know
we
about
didn't-
430.
Oh, I thought we did. I'm sorry. All those in the senior center, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, let's go to 2180, which is building inspection, building and inspection. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 20-180, building and inspection, in the amount of $332,779.
I would second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, again, I know the permits are way up. I like to see the office with this. Chris said the office would be open.
Yeah,
I think people, if they find the door closed, they just go through the windows anyway. So it's good to hear that they're gonna open the door.
well,
I
and with a new,
That's what Chris said.
inspection- Yeah, the inspection. we
Chris
won't
was
have
able to
to-
stay in the office more.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 3 votes. Did you vote police departments? I mean, it was the fire departments.
Yeah, it's fine.
No, did we do it?
No, we didn't.
Okay. I'd like to make a 2320, sorry, the Stony Hill Fire Department. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 20-320, the Stony Hill Fire Department, in the amount of $165,200.
I would second that.
Any discussion?
What's fun?
No,
You choking?
well, you can talk so that. we can- Any discussion about the Stony Hill Fire Department? They also did a good job. Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Let's go to
Boards and
board,
commissions, report.
Oh, okay. 10-340, I'd like to make a motion to fund boards and commissions in the amount of $63,600.
I would second it. And I'd like to make an amendment and take out the $10,000 from the charter revision. Commission, we've had the discussion at the Board of Selectmen's meeting. We don't think that commission is going to be up and running this year, so,
I think that's a separate motion. You have to-
no, I just amended your motion for the whole dollar amount.
I couldn't hear very well. You're on what department are you on?
Boards and
Boards
commissions,
and commission, and
340.
he's wants to amend the motion, but then we have to make a separate motion if he wants to make a cut.
No,
It's
no,
amendment?
yeah.
I
No,
amended your motion, you made a motion.
yeah, his motion for amendment is proper. That's good.
Okay, so is there any discussion on the amendment?
I don't think I got a second on my amendment yet, but I would certainly second that.
Okay,
Still not buying breakfast.
so, okay. Is there any discussion about the amendment?
Who seconded that?
John,
John,
Okay, thank you.
509, Brent, right, the charter? Is that-
Yes.
Yeah.
5509.
okay, so that would, with that, it would make it 53,600. Okay, so let's vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment to fund 10-160 professional services. Wait, no, please, where am I? No, I'm so, please forgive me, I'm just.
10,340,
I'm
and the
really
motion was 53,600, right?
Right, it'll be okay, in the amount of 53,600.
No, guys, so Nick made a motion, amended the motion, which was seconded by John Lennon to reduce line 5509 charter revision by $10,000.
Right.
That needs to be voted on. Once that's voted on, then another motion needs to be made for the total.
Okay,
Well, actually, I'll correct that one little bit. If the amendment passes, the main motion automatically is reduced. Then you vote on the main motion. You don't have to make a separate one.
right.
Yeah,
We were just gonna vote on the
So this
amendment.
motion is going to pass, well, I'm sorry. I think it's going to pass. Anything is.
Look,
We got you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
we're gonna vote on the amendment
right.
to reduce that line by $10,000.
Exactly.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. All right.
Okay, so your main
Now we're
motion
down.
is now.
now you need to go back and vote on the main
Okay,
motion.
53,600.
Gotcha. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 10-340 in the amount of $53,600.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Let's go to. 40-220 fleet maintenance.
I'm sorry, which account are you talking? I didn't hear.
Yeah, 40-220 fleet maintenance. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 40-220 fleet maintenance in the amount of $366,538.
Second.
Any discussion? It's gonna be maintained. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right, we're good. I'd like to make a motion, this is for the building maintenance 40-260, to fund that account in the amount of $862,104.
Second.
Any discussion about the building maintenance?
Brad, there's new employees here, is that correct? And they're at a lower.
Yeah, and what really, I think they were mostly hired at the standard rate. The difference in the salaries is some of the older employees had longevity.
Right.
The new hires wouldn't qualify, but they don't have it anyway in the contract anymore for the hires.
And
So
just
the
for-
1,300 is the longevity that we used to pay.
And just for everybody, how many salaries are in this building?
There's 5 full-time employees for building maintenance.
Okay, one more discussion, let's vote on it. Signify, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think everybody knows what we're trying to do. We're trying to get rid of the easier ones, real, not a lot of discussions. And we apologize, we're not doing the Board of Ed or the police tonight. It's just,
40.
I'm sorry. Was it predetermined? It's almost 9 o'clock, and I'm not sure, we're gonna be here well past 10 o'clock, unless you guys are willing to do it.
I think it should be up for a discussion as to whether or not we, not just told that it's ended.
We're not being told anything, we're.
No, I know.
we're
I
in a
understand.
democracy.
We've got
But we did earmark 2 nights for it, I think tonight that Matt did a wonderful job of his presentation, and I think that I would like to consider some of the things he had to say. And maybe I personally have other questions, and I think it'd almost be at 9 o'clock that, the biggest 2 budgets, I think, need a lot of discussion, and maybe on a fresh night. Make a difference.
That was the idea behind it. So I'm open to discussion if anyone wants to weigh in. That was the idea behind it.
Nick, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm looking right at you.
I can hear you now.
Okay, can we just, so which ones, can we just make a list of the ones that have not been voted? I just want to make sure that I got everything.
Sure.
I have it, Jen. You want me to?
Yeah,
read it off?
Brad has it.
Give me 1 second to get back to the beginning.
Well, why don't I just say,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Look, I'm not a fan of going till midnight either, but it's relatively early. And we do have some folks in the audience who've been sitting here. Seems to me we'd be, doing right by them to at least go through the discussion with them here.
If I might add, I know some of them can't be here Thursday too, so
Yeah,
that's your fault.
So what is,
What's
Brad,
still-
out of your list, what is left?
Correct. So 10-390 employee benefits,
Yep.
10-420 miscellaneous charges and transfers,
Yep,
20-360 the police department,
yep,
40-230 public works,
yep,
40-240 highway department,
yes,
50-440 debt service,
yep,
60-435 library, and then 70-450 and 70-460 Board of Ed and Board of Education maintenance.
okay.
What would you like to do?
I'd like to see us get through as much as possible. I think it's only fair. We've got a huge support here from education and also from the police department. I think we would be doing them a disservice by not. Like, it's only 8:45. I'd rather even push off some of the smaller boards until Thursday and discuss and the police department, seeing how they're all here and not waste another night of their time, not waste more of their time on Thursday by making it come out. That's just my opinion.
And I would like to see everybody come back, just so everybody knows what the whole town is doing, instead of just what they're interested in.
Yeah, it's a little bit dicey because honestly, I'd like to look at Matt's presentation again. Do you have that? Is it online?
No, but.
Maybe you could, make it
I'll
available?
post- Sure. I'll post it.
yeah.
I'll correct that one slide. I'll post.
Yeah, and that's, it's not anything we're doing we're just trying to focus on the ones that really need to focus on in one sitting. And I understand your point 100%. I just feel like that, to have like just a few of the accounts, the bigger accounts that that merit more discussion, to have them on a separate night. We've never gone through the whole thing in one night. We never have. So,
But we've gone later than equal.
well, yeah, we've gone
It's only
longer.
8:45. and we're wasting time having a discussion as to whether or not. I should
It's not really wasting time to have a discussion about it. Would you like to vote on it? I mean, that would be the fair thing to do, wouldn't it?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Do I have to do this in form of a motion now?
No, I think you just need to take a consensus.
Okay, let's take a consensus. Who feels that we should go forward and finish the accounts?
Well, I was at least proposing police department or board of ed or some sort of, and not ending the meeting at quarter to 9.
Okay.
So the vote is on
Well, we have-
Board of Ed and Police Department. Now,
No, there's no vote on that, it's just to carry on, but I agree with you, we could do that. We could definitely
Do what? I'm
do
sorry.
that. The police department.
But, right, I mean, I'd like to see where it takes us in times and,
Okay.
and then go from there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to fund account 20-360, police department.
I'm sorry, you want to do that, Robert?
Yeah, $5,412,168.
Second. I'd like to start. I'm a support of adding one officer per year. I think adding 2 officers, even though, Matt dropped it down. Matt first supported Brian's Terzian's recommendation to add 1 officer. That's by cutting 1. I'm not sure what happened overnight. There's been a lot of discussion between a few of us. But again, I'm going to support it with taking half of the officer. I won't make a motion. I just want everybody to talk about that.
Yeah, we're in the discussion.
Yep, exactly. So there won't be any motion, but I support adding 1 officer to the department this year.
And I guess if I may add, originally during all of the testimony from the chief, he originally requested 1 officer to the police commission. And I clearly remember that conversation that the chairwoman of the police commission and the board voted to add another one. So if we're going to believe in our chief and we're going to believe in the police department, I'm also in favor of increasing their budget and adding 1 officer and 4 cars. We just went through a lot of the different accounts, and there isn't a lot on the town side. And we always seem to beat up on the police department, but I think we're supporting 1 new officer and make sure they have the 4 cars because of those of the officers. And I think every year, if we try to add 1 officer, I think we're doing the right thing for all of Bethel. Crime is up, and we need to support our police department. And I think by being proactive and supporting 1 officer, I think, gives a good signal that we're trying to do the right thing for all of Bethel.
I have a question. It's been mentioned that Pugner went to the commission with just 1 officer and they give it 2. Is there anywhere, I was under the assumption that we had originally had asked, like in an ideal world, would like to see more than that. I don't know if I can ask a commission member or something like that. if
So I
there's-
clearly remember asking the
Right,
chairwoman how that all happened. And I said, the chief came to you with his budget and said, I want 1 new officer and all of the other extra stuff. We're just talking about, I think
Right.
the officer is really what the question is.
Right.
But let me just, and I said to her, do you have any clear data that says to you, as a commission, you read this report and you said, oh, we need 2 more officers this year? And she just said, these are things that I hear out in public, that she felt that she heard people asking for more police officers, but there was no data behind it.
So,
That's how I remember that conversation.
Well, I mean, I'm for the 1.5, funding it half a year. I know it takes a year for the police officers to get up. I think the police, like, if you look at the data that has come across in terms of our crime in comparison to to other towns. Just touching on a lot of things that Matt said, we are in the corridor of Route 6. That's a lot of resources. There is an increase in, IT that requires much time. I personally use them and they did a wonderful job, and I know how much time it took. And we're already underfunded, and I think in a year that.
But I just wanted
Right.
but if the chief, with all of the data that he has in his computer, said we need 2 officers, I feel like if he didn't ask for the 2 officers and asked for 1, to me, that seems like that's his want.
So,
I think you-
okay, I've been wanting to jump in.
Go ahead. Go ahead, yeah.
Actually, Daleen, you take on your hand
Oh.
first, go ahead.
Thank you. Chief Wagner, didn't you originally say we needed to get from 39 to 43?
Mhm.
So getting 1 would only get you to 40,
Correct.
and you'd be missing 3.
Correct.
So an additional 0.5 would get us 2 additional officers as of next year.
Correct.
What is the actual cost of eliminating the 0.5?
1,500.
Thank
Plus
you.
benefits.
Yeah.
What's the plus benefit?
Yeah, what is it?
21.
So 2,100 in FICA.
So under $30,000. Thank you.
And I was going online exactly where you were, Daleen. It's been clear from the beginning that the chief has been trying very hard to work with the Board of Finance to keep the number down, when all along we had a target of 42. And it's not lost on me what's been going on in this town with respect to Stony Hill, the national crime epidemic, whatever you want to call it. There's more stuff happening, where the cars getting stolen, people are not being held accountable for it. And it doesn't take that long to see that, we do have a crime problem in this state. There's no question about it. And in our town, it's very clear when you look at our numbers compared to everywhere else. It's an issue, and it's an issue across the state. So I can't sit here in good conscience and say, I'm not going to give them the half of officer now, not to mention the fact that the recruiting is difficult. I'd much rather see them get on the recruiting earlier this year and get somebody in that spot. When we're talking about 30 grand to have somebody in that spot for next year, I think it makes a lot of sense. And he's been trying, he's been talking about it to us for a while. They're trying to get to 42. And every other town around us has more. Towns with a lot less crime. And so I applaud them for doing a good job with the resources they have. But I just think it's a little short-sighted not to give that extra officer. And it's in our benefit. I know sometimes we talk about the cops and we support the cops, but it's in our benefit as a community to have that extra safety on the street. I'm not doing it just for the police officers. I'm doing it because of the town. So I really support the extra half officer.
Chief Wagner, how many do you have that are out in active military service?
Currently, there's 2, but 1 is coming back this year.
Oh, that's good.
Was the one that's been long-term, wasn't that position filled? So it's really not somebody on military leave?
Correct.
If I might just add to the record, that's why I changed. You're right, I did support Brian's motion on the belief that we still had that opening to fill.
Right.
I had this, I was.
But it is filled. So
It
what
is,
changed
but
the
I
number?
thought it was still open, so I thought, aha, that's our second officer, but then I found out I was wrong. It was my mistake. So that's why I put the second officer back in.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please jump in.
I'm not sure if I have anything new to say, but it may be just looking at it slightly different, what other folks have said. And Matt, you used the word bridge. I like that word. We, by virtue of the good work we've done in the prior years, we are set to really bridge what has been 2 hellacious years where we have, technical term, whacked budgets. And this is a good opportunity for us to, I think, bridge that. And if we do it along the lines of our priorities, right, nothing's more important than being safe and the folks who keep us safe, like EMTs, fires, and the police. So I think I'm with the folks who said, make the hires, do the 1.5.
Is there any more discussion? Shall we vote? Did you want to make any motions?
No, there's no motion here.
Okay, so then let's vote on the motion to fund the police department.
Wait, was there any other thing in that account?
No, not.
I think we have to vote on this one first.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we're gonna vote on the police budget right now. So that's all-
I'm sorry, excuse me.
I didn't think we were voting on one line, is that you?
No, we're voting
Yeah,
on the
we-
whole.
No, I thought, John, you had said you wanted 4 cars in the police budget. I think this is.
This has 3.
No, this has 3.
But you said the word 4, but we made up the other
In
one.
capital.
In
line.
Yeah.
capital money.
That's why we did that,
Okay,
because
got
we
it.
wanted to, be fair, so, okay. Motion is on the table. To fund the police department in the amount of $5,412,168. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm a no.
Nay.
2 names.
Who was the second?
John. Were you nay?
Nick were
I
no's.
was a no and I was a no.
Cynthia, you were, yes?
And-
Yeah.
No, she's asking, Cynthia made the motion, Nick seconded for
She
discussion.
wanted to know who the second no was.
Okay. Are we okay, Deanna?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
We have people waiting, so let's do the 460 account.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm trying to keep track of what we
Thank
have
you.
left. Yeah.
Thank you for what you guys do.
Yeah.
You know, there's one of you that bred the last breath of my mother, and I know what you guys do. And I do support that.
I apologize for the gaps. It's just that, we're trying a different way, and that sometimes happens when you try different ways.
Yeah, 460. Go for it.
All right,
Try everybody's mind.
let's go to account 70-460. That would be the Board of Ed maintenance.
We're gonna vote on. We're gonna vote for it.
Go ahead.
I'm good.
Okay, are you seconding that? Okay, well, no, first I have to make it. I'd like to make a motion to fund the 70-460 Board of Ed maintenance account in the amount of $497,694.
And I would second that. And I would like to amend the motion
Okay,
with a reduction of $47,694. I understand that there's money needed to keep maintaining, but we're making huge jumps on the road account, on salaries, on a maintenance account. There's a lot of COVID money out there, and I would hope we can make up the 47,000 on the Board of Ed maintenance 460 account. That's my motion.
I would certainly second.
Okay, who seconded it?
John.
Thank you.
any discussion on this?
So what doesn't get done would be my question.
So there'll be projects, the middle school gym hasn't been redone since the middle school gym opened in the 90s. We would have to look at the projects that's under the section D, the school building, right? Maintenance repairs, that's only $63,000.
Right.
So if you-
most of that would go.
So any
I'm
type
sorry,
of.
what are those things?
So
there are things like,
I know the middle school gym is a big part of it.
There's no COVID money that can do any of that?
No.
No.
Nope, it's not an appropriate use of the funds.
Yeah, that-
Remember, we had to get it approved by the State Department of Ed, and that's just not an appropriate use.
And that gym was done 10 years ago, I remember during your prison, right?
No, it was
No.
done in 19, when was the middle school?
not the
built?
middle school.
The middle school,
Okay,
middle
so
school,
it's
built,
middle
the
school.
90s?
It was a while.
1990.
Yeah, so
Thirty
it was
years
built in the
ago.
90s. Yep. So it wouldn't be able to be done.
The high school was done.
The high school was done.
So the middle school was done almost 30 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. 25 to 30 years, right?
So it's things like replacing wall partitions in restrooms, putting another coat of just a surface on the high school floor,
To maintain the work that we did.
completely redoing the middle school,
And then there's some things that vary.
repairs to student lockers at the middle school. Some additional signage in the campus, parking lot striping, a little bit of carpet
Things just that generally with maintenance of the buildings. Need to be maintained.
When you say the gym being redone, would that
You would
qualify as?
take it down to there and then
Okay, let me ask the question. Let me just finish the question. Would that come under the heading at all of a capital project? Or would that be something?
well, it's a small capital
Right.
project. It's 25,000. We use 50,000 as the cutoff to put it in as in a capital item. We don't usually put things under 50,000.
Right.
These are like small projects.
Carry out, excuse me,
No,
just if you use accounting lingo, capital.
Like
really
for
more
the,
repair,
like for the
right?
cap, long-term cap plan, we use 50,000 as a threshold
Cut off,
to,
okay.
to
Right.
put things
So-
into long-term cap.
So it might have kind of a nature of repair. You still put it in capital by virtue of being above the 50 grand.
Yes.
Got it.
Is there anything in that list that is?
No, that was the
Okay.
most expensive item because the total is 63,000. It's not
Right.
a lot of items.
My understanding is that at the middle school, there are numerous children's lockers who don't actually lock anymore.
That's right,
Yes,
that's why they.
and that's one
So
of
it's
the
like a
items.
safety security issue, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, so, and we haven't been able to get to that.
I understand, yeah.
Is that on the list? The
It
lockers?
is the lockers, not new lockers,
Right,
just
just-
repairing.
It's okay, they lock.
Repair of a bunch of
Hence the name
lockers.
lockers.
And again, that last year was cut down to 350. We're adding 100,000 this year. But again, it's another one of these accounts that just keep, we have to get back up. And I don't think we can just jump right up to where it was last year. I would like to go a little slower with it.
I can give you some history, so it sat at around $500,000.
And I appreciate it.
For a lot
And
of
we're trying to
years.
limit if they have
I
a question.
understand, no, I understand.
Point of order.
Okay.
I actually want to know the history of the account, because I don't know.
It
I
sat
don't
at
think
about
we know.
$500,000.
I would like to know the history
For
of
many
the account.
years, because I'm here 16 years, so I'd say it sat there for many years at 500,000. And it was cut down to 450. And last year was unusual, because last year, 100,000 of it is being paid for through our 1% account, but that's one-time money for recurring expenditure. So we're trying to put it all back into the operating budget so that it's a better accounting match. That's the change. That's why it's so significant.
I would amend my motion to cut it 25,000 if John would amend his.
Okay,
We'll get the dollar amount in a minute, but any other discussion about the amended motion? Did you get that, Deanne?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
yes, just jump in because I'm not calling. If there's silence, feel free to fill that silence with your voice.
Nick, I hear where you're coming from. I understand it completely. I'm gonna go back to, I think we have a one-time opportunity to get back to what was the level of funding services. Again, by virtue of a lot of the good work that this board did and by virtue of lacking prior budgets. I take the point, 25,000 is not a lot either way, but I would be more comfortable going back to the full amount, again, because we have that one-time bridge ability, and then bring it to the town meeting and see what people have to say at the public hearing.
Actually, I'd like to jump in on that. I'm actually looking at it differently. Obviously, listen, there's a lot going on. The taxpayers are paying a premium and inflation is going out of control. One of the things I asked about early on in this was looking about how much each year we put back into that 1% account. I asked them, look like the past 5 years. I said, well, that's where you're drawing some
This
of
is
this
the
money.
460.
I know, but I'm just talking about, like, look at, you just mentioned how you took money from that account to pay these kinds of things. Last year, we put in 21,000. Previously, we put in other large amounts. I think I would go with the 25,000. I think it's okay to send a message that we're gonna come up with a way to do the maintenance anyway. We always do, but I think 25,000 is pretty reasonable. And I know we have money left over every year. So I would support the 25,000 from that account.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Let's give it a try. So on the amended motion to reduce line 70-460 in the amount of $25,000, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Yay.
Okay.
Who are the nays?
Bob and Dave.
Okay, so now we're gonna go back to the main motion.
Your main motion total now is 472,694.
472.
You don't have to make a separate motion, that's
Oh.
on the floor.
Right, it's the math though. So I
You
don't
mean
have
dollar
to,
amount.
I don't have to restate it with the dollar amount. I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you don't, you just think the main motion is now, you don't have to say, I
main-
make a new motion.
No, not make, no, go back to the main motion. We're gonna fund that account, that 460 in the amount of $472,694. Please signify by saying, opposed. Okay,
It was all, everybody,
yes,
Yeah, it's just the math.
yeah, it was just.
Okay. just making sure.
Okay. All right, let's go to account 70-450. We're gonna make a motion to approve line 70-450 Board of Education in the amount of $51,164,831.
I'll second it for discussion.
Let's discuss.
Anybody have any discussion about that?
I'd like to keep the budget as is. I think our Board of Ed did a good job in funding this. I think they asked for a 1.9 million increase. Or two, sorry, I might be looking at a different number, but.
1,900,000.
Yeah, yeah. So I took a look at this from a standpoint of numbers, because that's what we do. You guys had 112, we look at the simple math of 112 new students coming into the district, and we fund those students at $15,968 per student. If we do that simple math across the board, we're at almost $1.8 million just in funding those current, just funding our current level of students at where we currently have. And then if we add in contracts, not even looking at the two full-time teachers of $520,000, we're already at the 1.9 million increase, asking our Board of Ed and our teachers to do more with less, without even looking at it. And so that was kind of the way that I took a look at this number, and never mind, we already discussed, the Rockwell SPED program and the addition of, that's not, that 1.9 million isn't even including that 1 million in additional teachers that will actually keep, that Rockwell SPED program will actually keep money in the district and keep us from having to pay probably close to almost 2 million in having to outsource some of these kids. So I know it's a big number. I think in a year of everything that has gone on, I've seen it from my own children. I've seen it from even, my grandson in terms of, unsocialization and the whole thing, that this is not the year to cut this budget. And if we look at it, just Melanie's statement at the presentation, I've known Melanie long enough to know that I don't think she would have yelled at us if she had any other wiggle room to do that. So that's my 2 cents in terms of the discussion, in terms of how it is that I took a look at, and I looked hard at this and was like, come on, I have to be able to cut $25,000. Like, come on, I gotta make a statement. So I can't do it. I can't do it. So.
That's a good question.
Okay, so. The motion on the table is fund the Board of Education, 70-450, in the amount of $51,164,831.
I would just like to say one thing. Melanie yelled at us like we're kids, and we're not kids. And someone said, you spend like a drunken sailor. I wish you spent like a drunken sailor. Drunken sailors stop when they don't have any more money in their pockets.
Okay, the question has been moved. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm a no.
I'm a no too.
I'm a no.
So 3 no's, 4.
Okay, so Nick, Cynthia, and John were no's.
Yes. Okay. Let's go to the library. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 6435, the library, in the amount of $913,480.
I will second that.
Discussion. I would like to say on behalf of Megan, who I think is doing a great job and has brought the library into the 21st century. And I had, I talked about programs with her, and they're just, I think she's done a great job. And I support this budget. I think she did a good job with the budget. She's got all her people back, all her staff. And that's what I feel like. Anybody have any discussion on the library? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Brad, remind me, we still have,
You have 5 left.
yeah, we have the road, the highway, the debt service.
Why don't we do benefits?
Oh, we can do that now, yeah. Okay, this is, again, sorry for skipping around. This is 10-390. I'd like to make a motion to fund employee benefits in the amount of $6,264,6.
Second.
Not much to discuss there. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the next one we'll go to is 10-420, miscellaneous charges and transfers in the amount of $1,186,296.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Road construction. 40-240 road construction. I'd like to make a motion to fund that account in the amount of $2,350,372.
Second.
Discussion.
This is another account that we're jumping way up, but it seems to be the year we're gonna get caught up, so. Keep it at 900. I have no motion.
Nor do I. I'm a big fan of the highway department. Any discussion?
With respect to the road construction, basically, how much of that goes through labor? When you look at that $900 or $900,000, like, what is involved in the 900? If we were to cut the road construction a little bit. What would it- what would it say?
Materials.
You're
for
paying,
the road.
you're paying by the square foot.
Yeah,
It's
you're not-
labor and
it's not-
material. If you don't have the material, you don't have the labor. So
800.
they kind of follow each other.
Okay,
Yeah, it's mostly outside contractors. so-
Yeah,
and you've already cut it 75,000.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
any further discussion? Okay, let's vote on it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that leaves,
You have 230 and then debt,
public works, yeah, and I do want to talk about that.
40.
Yeah, 4230. I'd like to make a motion to fund that account in the amount of $382,473.
Second.
Any discussion on public works?
That's the one with the part-time, Brad, right?
Yeah, so the initial ask was $16,000 for part-time, the board of selectmen cut that down to 11.
And we did the benefits already, no, that account.
Didn't we just do benefits?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would have been affected by that.
Yeah.
Not gonna go back to that one.
Any discussion? Okay, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have one more, right? The debt service?
yes, correct.
All right. I would like to talk about this one, actually. I'd like to make a motion to fund account 50-440 debt service in the amount of $5,464,869.
Second.
Okay, Brad, I need to be reminded of this, the debt service, because it was a little bit complicated and I just want you to explain it
Yeah.
again.
So mostly over the last 5 years, the debt service fund has grown. I don't have all the history with me because I've looked at it numerous times. But so we've gotten to the point that there's $3.7 million in this. How we got there is important for me to know how we don't get this big number again, but it's sitting there. And my thing on it is it's time to use it. Part of the reason we let it build up is because we knew we had the school projects. The school projects were reimbursed at, Terry knows the exact number, but let's call it 45%. If the state had dropped it to 40 on a $60 million project, that's a big difference. So we purposely let it grow a little bit, knowing that we had the $60 million project going on. So now that that project is mostly done, it's time to start using it. At the end of my debt service plan that I put out, we'd have $600,000 in it, plus whatever we receive when the final audit is done on the school renovation, which could be a year from now, could be 5 years from now, depending on when the state puts us in their schedule to audit it.
Because my question, I would ask this to Christine, is that, is there a chance that when they do their audit, they're gonna find some of those costs ineligible?
No, because we have to submit to the state, when we submit a change order, we have to submit it, and they tell us immediately whether or not the expense was eligible or ineligible.
Okay.
And so we predict what will be an ineligible expense. So I do not think that will change. We are anticipating wrapping up the project. I think you all know it's come under budget about $1 million between the two projects. I think that the building site committee has just got a few, I'm going to call them hanging chads, a few little things that needs to be settled. And then we can officially close the project for the state. But to Brad's point, then it has to get in the audit cycle.
Right.
So we only have that. Yeah, and it's called a holdback. So they hold back 11% until the audit actually occurs. But we have submitted everything we can for the town to get reimbursement to date. There's nothing else we can submit because we're already at the holdback. So we really have we really are motivated to close the project. Yes.
Oh, yeah, no, I get that.
And there was no changes in the project that the state's gonna say, whoa, you weren't supposed to do that.
No.
Yes.
And what's, Dr. Kerr, what's the audit cycle? I know it's kind of up to the state, but the high school was like 10 years.
Well, there's a lot of factors. Part of what delayed the high school is the town had some legal issues that were outstanding for quite a while that actually went to court with a couple of the vendors that were on the project. So that dragged it out for a bit. And then also you get on the cycle and then you have to wait for them to be available to come out. And as Brad said, during COVID, there was some interruption to the cycle. So those, I don't know how backlogged they are. The positive is that they have changed the way we file. I actually scan every invoice into their and upload it to the state. So if they wanted to, they probably have been able to do a lot of the bulk of the audits right from the desk.
Whereas before, in the prior processes, the district would keep all the paperwork until the audit came out. This new system that they implemented, even though it's a learning curve, is actually much more efficient. so that I think the audit process will go through much more smoothly because we have to provide so much information with every filing.
And they spot check
They spot check.
during the filings.
Right, so I think that I do think it'll go. I want to just throw one caveat out. I'm sure you've seen in the news, the Office of School Construction is under a little bit of
Well,
The Office of what?
the leadership is under a little bit of a scrutiny. Thank you, I was trying to find the right word. But I don't think that will affect the actual process. And so we're at a point where, like I said, we can close it out and start to file to get the 11% back.
I believe last time when Terry filed the final on the high school, it was about a year until it came out, right?
It's about a year or two,
Yeah.
and then they came out.
Well, I think it
But
was like a
that
year
was a
for them.
different
But that was a
system.
whole
That was
different
like
system.
archaic system, and now,
Right, right.
you know, like
Yeah.
you said.
It's much more efficient.
It
Yeah.
should go much quicker
Yeah.
this time.
But that, if the state does their audit sooner, that just puts more money in this debt service fund
It does.
to, so that's why I think this is, we're drawing down on this debt service fund. I think we're doing it responsibly. And that's why I drew it out 6-7 years, just to try to level the debt that way. And I did speak to our financial advisor before I ever proposed this to anybody to make sure he was on board with it. And he said, absolutely, the rating agencies would look at it and go, all right, you have a plan. You're not taking the 3.7 and doing it all in 1 year and then jumping your debt back up the next year. So he was on board with it. And he said it would be great.
I have a silly question. So if we didn't use this, what would the mill rate look like?
So a mill is worth $2.1 million. So if we didn't use this $1.3 million from the debt service fund, you're talking about 0.65 mils around there. In addition to
the
yeah, so the mill rate would jump by like 1 mil.
So about 1.5.
The mill rate would jump like 1 as a whole.
Okay.
Because right now we're looking at, I haven't looked at it after some of the cuts tonight. But before tonight, we were looking at a 0.4 mill rate increase.
Okay.
So that extra 1.3, we'd be looking at a roughly 1 mil.
And then, because we've done a lot of discussion tonight about bringing funds back to where it was, the 900, refunding the school at 500. What does this look like for us long-term by using this? And again, I'm a newbie, so, sorry about that, but what does this look like for us for next year? We're using this money this year.
Yeah.
And
So,
then, right, I'm saying, we're trying to get back and get things going. Are we, by doing this year, gonna then be looking at a huge increase for next year?
no, so let me pull up that spreadsheet. So the plan, which I plan on adjusting every year, and hopefully the adjustment next year is go, yep, that still makes sense. Called for using 1.3 million this year to make our budget the 5.4 million. Next year uses 652,000, which lowers our budget number by 29,000, so relatively flat on it. The following years, we use another 500,000 and the debt service budget drops by 57,000. That's the bulk of it. So once we get past those 3 years, assuming there's no more bonded debt that comes on, the next 3 years, we use 183, 167, 151. So the debt was dropping anyway. So what we were trying to do is take off this little mountain that we have for this year and dive down and then kind of stay flat at the 5.4. And over the next then 5 years, go down to $5 million.
Okay.
We're just trying to gradually go into it, with the biggest drop being this year of 300,000 budget over budget, and then 28, 57, 150, 150, 150, so.
Right, I would just hate to see a big savings this year or savings.
Yeah, well, that's why we're only using roughly a third of it.
Okay. Are we cool? Okay, let's vote. Hold on, it says my birthday, and my eyesight isn't what it used to be.
You were dying to say that.
No, I wasn't. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
It's so slow.
Marcia.
Oh, my God. Where the hell is that thing? All right.
I don't think she was kidding.
Oh, no, I'm not kidding.
No,
About her birthday.
Now I discussed the camera. It's gonna happen. Okay. Let's vote on that motion for the debt service. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, then. That's our show.
We
Oh,
need
no, I'm sorry,
a
we need a
couple more votes.
motion.
Oh, we do?
Yeah,
For the whole
Oh, for the
thing.
whole thing. Oh, silly me. I'm
My
sorry.
bad.
Okay, get out of here.
so so the total town, which includes town operating, which I'll give you that number.
Okay,
Town operating is 28,397,717. Debt service is the same at the 5,464,869. And Board of Education maintenance is 472,694. All that equals the town line in the budget of 34,335,280.
okay.
So we'll need a vote on that, and then we vote on the total. You don't need to vote on the board again because it's one line.
Right, so tell me the Board of Ed.
So the Board of Ed is the 51,164,831.
Okay,
And then the total combined is $85,500,111.
okay. So first I'd like to make a motion to approve the town side of the budget at $34,335,280. Okay. Let's vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
So everybody except for Nick.
Yes. All right. The Board of Ed.
I don't think you need to vote on it.
We don't have to vote. We don't.
You've
You've
already voted
already voted on
I
the
know,
Board of
yeah, this
Ed.
is cumulative.
This
Yes,
is the-
that's my
this-
first
the-
time
the
doing
total.
this. All right, so the total we're gonna vote on, combined total. I'd like to make a motion to approve $85,500,111.
I'm sorry, is it 500,000 or 507?
85,500,111.
Okay, my mistake, sorry.
Okay.
I thought I heard a 7 in there.
Second. Anybody seconding it?
Okay.
Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed, yay.
I'll oppose nay too. So that's 3 nays. Okay.
Would you like to know what the mill rate would be, assuming the revenue and everything else stays the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did cut 30, the board did cut 35,000 tonight. Actually, no, it goes down to 0.38.
Okay.
So what's the total? What's the total bill rate?
The mill rate as proposed would be 34.64, which is an increase of 0.38 or 1.1%.
And the dollar amount on an average house in Bethel?
$82 a year. And 21 cents.
No, it's at 21 cents. That's exactly right. I just know when I bought my house in 1996, my taxes were like 2,800 and now they're over $6,000. And I'm still living there. That's the good news. Second that motion?
Oh, do you need to put these for the town meeting?
I think that
Yeah.
since
Actually,
Board of Finance, yeah. So yeah, I think you need to vote on a public. Dion?
I got one.
Yes.
You need to vote on a date for the public hearing.
Yeah,
They do.
Okay, I got this hearing because I got the schedule. I didn't think we had to.
yes. Let's see here. Public hearing date is. Oh God, give me just a second, guys, sorry. 3/21 at 7 PM at Bethel Middle School.
sorry.
Hey, hold on, just let us look at it. It's March 21st at the middle school at 7. Yeah. Okay. Like to make a motion to approve the date for the public hearing of March 21st at 7 PM at the middle school. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, motion to adjourn. You guys, I can see the smoke coming up your hill. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, did you have? that?
Second.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Get out of here.
Okay. So then,
So was he a cutter?
Okay.